Good morning and welcome. Thank you for coming today to the Cashmere 9/11 Spirit of America Remembrance Ceremony. My name is Doug Jones, U.S. Army retired, and I will be leading us through the ceremony today as we reflect upon the events of that tragic day 17 years ago and honor those who have died and lost their lives. Most of us will probably remember in great detail the morning the 4 flights hijacked by Islamic terrorists slammed into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, in that lonely field in rural Pennsylvania. Wearing this uniform and as a member of the armed forces, that day changed the trajectory of my life and that of my family. In the fight against terror that followed and continues today, I and many of the veterans that are here today were fortunate to return home, but many never did. And many continuing the fight today never will. And as the years pass, fewer and fewer will have a memory of that day, that September 11th day, and the freedom that we fight for in protecting and securing our homeland. And it's up to us to proclaim as a nation that we will never forget, and that, fellow Americans, is why we are here today. So thank you for coming. It's an important day. Before we move on, I want to thank the Cashmere Brass Ensemble and Jeff Dusenberry for their preludes as we gather here today. Very nice. Appreciate it. Thank you. I also want to remind everyone that the Spirit of America 9/11 commemorative coins are available at the table over here to my left. And what these coins do, they're $20, is they help us to maintain this wonderful memorial here, and will also help to fund our Phase 2, which there's information in your bulletin about, and also you can look at the displays in the behind after the ceremony today. Now, if you'd please stand for the presentation of colors by the Seattle Police Pipes and Drums and the Chelan County Sheriff's Office Honor Guard. Uniformed personnel, please present arms as they arrive. Uniformed personnel, order arms. Civil Air Patrol Cadet Manny Larson will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please take your seats as Cashmere Mayor Jim Fletcher comes up to provide some opening comments.
Welcome to Cashmere, I guess is the first thing to say, being a fairly new mayor and getting broken into this, but trying to find something of relevance to say today. I looked for a quote, and I'd like to read the following. Now we have inscribed a new memory alongside the others. It's a memory of tragedy and shock, of loss and mourning. But not only a loss and mourning, it's also a memory of bravery and self-sacrifice, and the love that lays down its life for a friend, even a friend whose name you never knew, George W. Bush. Thank you and welcome to Cashmere.
Thank you, Mayor. So we are honored today to have Senator Brad Hawkins here with us today to share a few words of reflection. Senator Hawkins.
Well, thank you all so much for coming out. Thank you to Mayor Fletcher and Mr. Green, Tom Green, and all the wonderful members of the Cashmere community who have helped to make this possible for all these years and for all the many years in the future. It really leaves a powerful legacy for the Cashmere community in North Central Washington, so thank you very much. I am State Senator Brad Hawkins. I'm honored to be here to share a little bit about my reflection of September 11th. I was actually boarding a plane at Pangbourne Airport, and it was the 6 a.m. flight. It's one of the earliest ones, and of course the attacks were 3 hours ahead over in New York City. And as we were boarding the flight at Pangbourne, and you'll have to remember back to the days when before they were the Transportation Security Administration and all the rigorous screening process that we now undergo because of the vicious September 11th attacks. But as we were waiting in line to board the plane, and that line progressed pretty quickly, we watched on the small television screen where they had CNN running continuously. We saw that one plane had crashed into one of the Twin Towers, and I remember some of us who were boarding the flight that morning, we had just woken up, so we were just really sort of surprised by that, and we thought maybe it was we didn't know the size of the aircraft, and thought maybe it was a small errant plane. I think as many of us probably did. And then we boarded the plane at Pangbourne, the Horizon flight, and we got on the plane pretty quickly, and it wasn't too long before you had that feeling that we were about ready to take off. Everybody had got positioned in their seats and things like that. And there was an announcement by the pilot that a second plane had crashed into the second Twin Tower. And I say crash, but really, as we know now, it was an attack. And the whole plane was really taken aback by that. And the pilot followed the announcement by stating that the FAA had suspended air travel all across the United States, and we wouldn't be taking that Horizon flight to Seattle, that we would be deboarding the plane in East Wenatchee. And so as we were all sort of trying to take in what we had just heard, what we had seen all through the line, with that first plane, and what we had heard about the second plane from the pilot, and the really significant step that the FAA would take to suspend air travel all across the United States, stepped off that plane, deboarded, and those of us gathered around the same television set where we saw the first plane attack, and we sort of took in the news reporting following that, and it started to really, the gravity and the severity of the situation really started to sink in, and we all then went back to our loved ones and our families, and then obviously the aftermath is something that we know all too well. And sometimes, when we see things on YouTube that pop up around this time of year, some of us might not want to watch those video clips, and my first instinct is not to, but then I've conditioned myself to watching them so that I can always remember what we went through as a country, and how brave the first responders were in that instance, and really the overwhelming bipartisanship and support that our country experienced in the days and the weeks and the months following that, and the worldwide support that the United States as a community received from other countries. And then obviously the response from the United States, it was very overwhelming in response to that. And it leads me to believe, as I wrap up and to share my reflection, I just wanted to really say thank you to not only the first responders that day, but the first responders everywhere, in every community, including many of you here who are here in our community. I thank you very much. I'm thinking about my process that I'm heading back to Olympia soon, and the uniform that I wear there is just a suit and tie. But those of you who put on a uniform with a vest first and safety gear to protect yourself, and when you go into harm's way, that's a level of public service that I'll never know. And the bravery and the courageousness that you show to do your jobs to protect us and be first responders, me and my family will be forever grateful for that. And all of the proud and brave men and women who have served in our military, past and present, and the military families who sacrifice along with the servicemen and women, I also thank you from the bottom of my heart, so that we can defend this flag and defend the freedoms that we hold dear. So thank you again to the Cashmere community for making this a special day and remembering this important day for us, and thank you for everyone for turning out.
Without our Creator, this would not be the country it is, this great nation. And my apologies for not bringing the Reverend up when he was supposed to, for the invocation. So please welcome to the invocation Chaplain Ben Torkelson.
Today is a day we set aside to remember what happened 17 years ago on September 11, 2001. An act of violence which changed the course of this country and those who served in the first responder, military, and civilian communities, and still serve it to this day. I myself was in my third year in the Marine Corps on that day and watched in horror, knowing what was to come for those of us who were serving. We were going to do what we'd been training to do for all those years, and we knew training was over. So this day holds a special place in my heart as it affected our nation, those who responded to the call, and had a major impact on the direction of so many other lives. Please join me in a prayer. Lord Jesus, we gather here today to remember all the lives which were lost in this calculated act of violence against our nation. We still grieve the loss of those lives from 17 years ago and stand here today to solidify and be united together in that loss. Today we cry out to you for forgiveness, for strength, for courage, peace, and your love. I ask that your grace be felt by all those here today, and that each of us can know what it is to be truly loved by you. Lord, bless all those here today and preside over this ceremony as we reflect on the events and the ultimate sacrifice people made responding to the call for help, September 11th, 2001. In your heavenly name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaplain. We will now hear again from Jeff Dusenberry in God Bless America.
I too do remember that day, 17 years ago. I was sitting on the foot of my bed in Anchorage, Alaska, and my two kids were there with me, and my wife, and I saw those horrible acts of evil, and we'll never forget it. And so what I'd like to do is have us all stand and pray this song with us together. As the storm cloud gathers far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to our land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we join our voices in this solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. Oh, God, please bless America, my home, sweet home. Join us. Together, let's sing this song a little bit more upbeat with the Cashmere Band. Everybody. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet
Thank you, Jeff, and the band. That was simply wonderful. It was excellent. We are honored today for our guest speaker to have with us Rufus Woods, publisher emeritus of the Wenatchee World. Most of you know him. Rufus, thank you for coming and sharing with us today on this very special day of remembrance.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. It's really an honor to be here on this auspicious day and to honor those who lost their lives, those who have served our country, the first responders in New York City and at that time, and also those here today. All of us, I think, remember the events of September 11th. You know, we watched in shock and horror at what occurred. We witnessed first responders risk their lives to save as many people as possible amidst the chaos and confusion, the death and destruction. One cannot help but be moved by the memory of these courageous souls who rushed to the scene. When tragedies strike, humanity almost always comes shining through. And the first responders on that day saw humans in need, and they responded with courage. They did not help people based on their religion, based on their faith, based on their race, based on their socioeconomic position. They just helped people. Human beings were in need, rescuers rushed in to help. This sense of serving humanity is every bit as real here among our first responders in north central Washington. I remember a young Douglas County firefighter telling me about rushing to a scene and having a father hand in his child, hoping that he could save this kid, and he could not. It was too late. This young firefighter has a couple of young kids of his own and was just heartsick that he could not help, but also the trust this person had in him. Our first responders bear a tremendous burden when they serve us every single day. It is this sense of service and sacrifice that shows us America at its best. You know, community is not about us versus them. It's really about us. The author and political scientist Robert Putnam observes that modern society has less trust, less caring for one another, and more loneliness due to weakening community ties.
And I think what we see a lot in the news today bears this out. It's a tumultuous time, and our humanity is being tested. But what I see every day in our communities reflects a strong commitment to service and to sacrifice. We see this most profoundly with our first responders and the military veterans who have served this country. But we also see the sense of community growing in our Wenatchee Valley and in North Central Washington. The sense of the greater good is alive and well here, and that should give us great hope and confidence. People coming together for a shared purpose is the magic of community. You know, this remarkable 9/11 Spirit of America Memorial was created thanks to a small group of committed individuals who wanted to honor those who lost their lives on September 11th, as well as offer a message of hope. And I think they've done just that. As we remember 9/11 today, let us thank the first responders in our midst who are ready at a moment's notice to sacrifice themselves for their neighbors. And let us commit ourselves to doing our part to rise to that same challenge in our own way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rufus. Now it's time to invite Tom Green up. He is the Memorial Foundation Board President and personal friend. Tom and I go way back in our military history, so come on up, Tom, and I'm going to present some comments.
We called out we have an eagle flying overhead, so I'm not sure who ordered that eagle up, but bird certainly knew when to fly exactly. So I'm more the informal guy here, and I've reflected to a couple of our members of our board this morning and team that for some reason I'm more emotional today than any of the other ceremonies, and I'm not sure why. I'm not totally sure why. Maybe it's because this march through 5 years with this wonderful team, we've had different people from the community, the greater community, come and go and be part of this. And people walking in at exactly the right time when we needed something special to be done, especially during construction and winning the memorial. It was totally amazing. And we need to write a book about that. We've got a short history itself, but all the emotion, all the people that were involved, it was just totally amazing. But as we march forward with these annual ceremonies, each one has its own character. Each one has its own time. Each one is surrounded by different things going on in the world. And the 9/11 Memorial is about something that happened that was a world event, perpetrated primarily on the United States of America, but impacting everyone. There are 9/11 memorials in other countries, other cities, other states. So it's really a big deal to be here. And I look out there, I've already had a comment from one of our key people on our board, and I see the same thing. This is probably the biggest crowd of people to come out since the dedication in 2015. So this is the 5th annual award, or 5th annual ceremony since we did the first ceremony on this site prior to building the memorial in 2014. And Sheriff Burnett was our keynote speaker during that time. We had an arrival ceremony before that, after we won the memorial, and had that ceremony out by the museum. So we've actually had 6 ceremonies, including this one now, so very emotional. One of the other reasons maybe I'm emotional is some of us on the board, and probably most of us, have really gotten into this mission and this vision and the purpose of being here and the purpose of volunteering to do this. Right after the dedication in 15, I took my granddaughter back and met with one of the docents and curators of the New York Museum, New York 9/11 Museum that we've been coordinating with. That was a very impactful experience. This last fall, I took my grandson back to the Pentagon Memorial, and the head of their family group, that's actually one of the leaders of that memorial, took Trevor and I both inside and outside places that they don't normally take the public. The Pentagon's much more restrictive now getting in there, but it was extremely emotional. And so this kind of an accumulation of things. So for some reason this morning when I got up, it was a heavier time. And then the other time was that I was planning to talk about phase 2 primarily in history. I touched on that a little bit. But a few days ago, Cy Sousley, who's the assistant fire chief here in Cashmere, contacted me and said one of their people has run into a gentleman who's at the fire camp in Leavenworth. This gentleman is a firefighter in the city of Seattle. And he was on the ground 3 days after 9/11 with a team of firefighters led by Assistant Chief A.D. Vickery, who I knew from Seattle. They were on the ground 3 days later at the kind of the end of the rescue period and the beginning of recovery, which is extremely emotional. And this gentleman is a medic. That's his career field. And we were trying to figure out, we're going to give the guy space to talk today or not. And frankly, giving up some of my time and focus to have him come up and just reflect a little bit on the impact of today. We're talking about having him come back so we can really talk to you about the events on the ground back there. At the fundamental level of being a medic in a large team of people who are there to support the city of New York and the broader community after that event. So I'd like to have him come up. Where are you? Okay. Talked to him earlier and sprung this idea on him. This firefighter Lance Cannon is going to take a couple minutes just to give you a reflection, and then I'll close with a couple of other remarks.
Good morning. This is most impressive. Thank you very kindly for letting me come up here. I promise I will make it brief. Nobody wants to see the redhead with a forehead blister up on stage. Just for the luck of the draw that I ended up being able to go and serve, and it was a great honor. And it's nice to have people remember those types of things that happened to the folks at 9/11. And I just want to say that we need to honor these things. We need to remember these things. And like your brochure says, we need to educate people. For if we don't, all these things go away like tears in the rain. And with that, I thank you for being allowed to speak.
Yeah, I appreciate that opportunity. That was just great. The other thing I want to talk about, one other thing really quickly, is Flight 93, the memorial that's in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. 2 days ago, they dedicated a new tower of chimes that's 93 feet tall. There's a chime in that tower. I guess they're still putting them in, but there is going to be a chime in that tower for every person lost at the Flight 93 site, 40 individuals. And you know the story about how the plane was taken down by the passengers and how its probable intended target was the Capitol building of the United States of America. If that had happened in terms of the country as a whole, that would have been an incredible, horrible event that would have made that day much worse, as we certainly can all understand. This memorial, we have a piece of the World Trade Center, 60th floor level, as you know, 1,100-pound piece of steel. We also have a 300-plus pound piece of limestone from the face of the Pentagon when the 757 hit the Pentagon. We have not had, until now, anything from the Flight 93 site. So we've been coordinating with one of their curators, and Flight 93 site is actually owned and operated by the National Park Service. It's a beautiful site. I plan on going back there as soon as I can. But they have loaned us a stone from the field of Flight 93, where the aircraft went down. We received the stone about a month ago in a box, and I asked the board, I said, what do we do? And they said, keep it in the box for an appropriate time. I thought, well, this would be a cool place to open the box. And they said, no, we have not built phase 2 yet. So phase 2 is coming up. So it's exciting. We will end up having something from each of the major sites of 9/11 when we get done, and hopefully dedicate that next year. So some of you have heard about what we call phase 2. I don't want to scare you that it's phase 2 and we're going to have 3, 4, 5, 6. Phase 2 and our focus right now is the last addition to this plaza. 2 granite pieces shaped like the World Trade Center towers, 10.8 feet high, 20 inches square, in total scale with the real towers, with every name of everyone lost on 9/11 in New York engraved on those 2 towers. And they will be sitting right to my rear, right where the sidewalk comes in, and the line of the center of this memorial goes back. Right at that apex, those 2 towers will sit. To the right along those sidewalks will be 2 other pieces. One will be for Flight 93 in the shape of the state of Pennsylvania, and it will have a raised area, and the granite people are going to be actually inserting the stone from the field back there into that monument. And then the other one, of course, is going to be shaped like a Pentagon for the Flight 77 losses. So those actually 4 new pieces we're hoping to add and have those dedicated next year. The piece from the Flight 93 site is on permanent loan to the city and our foundation because it really still belongs to them. They talked initially about maybe somebody giving something from a family member or something like that, or a piece of the aircraft, and they immediately realized that the families of Flight 93 did not want anything like that shared. So they all agreed that rocks and stones from the field could be shared with other memorial sites, and I think a few other ones have gotten those as well. So with that, it's wonderful being here. I just have to thank everyone that's been involved in this from the get-go years ago. We have a fabulous board of directors, and right now I'd like to have the board members stand up briefly, just so you can see who they are. And this in no way takes away from the scores of people who have been part of this project from late 2013, when the vision here with a few people before I got involved started this whole project. So thank you to everyone. And Mick, for the next ceremony portion.
I too would like to thank everyone for coming out this morning, but to my brothers and sisters in the back, thank you. This day brings they're not tears of sadness, they're tears of joy. Joy that I have the opportunity and honor to serve with you. In the back, you'll see people in t-shirts and green pants, and they've been digging in the hills behind us for the last 8 weeks, saving our community. Today's guest speaker, let me say something first, and I don't mean to take up time, but look back behind you here and the young people in the red t-shirts. Those are recruit firefighters on their second day of training. Young men and young women, I expect you to be here 30 years from today helping me find a seat in this audience so that I can honor your service 30 years from today. Our guest speaker today was going to be Linda Marone. Linda hails from New Jersey. Her husband, Fred, was a New Jersey State police officer. After he retired, Bill, one of his friends, tells me a funny story that when a police officer retires, that being a security cop at one of the local box stores doesn't quite cut it. And so Fred became an officer in the Port Authority for New York. On that tragic day, Fred was across the river. Fred responded to the towers immediately when they were struck, and Fred was killed and lost that day. His wife, Linda, was going to be our speaker today. Unfortunately, she was too ill to travel. Linda supported all of the Port Authority people who lost their family that day before she laid her husband to rest. We wish Linda well, but our educational purpose here is to remember those folks who perpetuate the very spirit of 9/11. It's not the tragedy of 9/11, it's the spirit of 9/11. It's what this country did after 9/11. It's what we do today that embodies and emboldens who we are. And so, Tom, we have a plaque for Linda Marone, and I'd like Bill and Nancy Moffett, good friends, to come forward. And after we present this award and after today's ceremonies are over, for all the first responders that are here, I want to do something for Linda. As this thing winds down, I want every first responder to come to this stage. I want us all to take a group photo so that along with this plaque, we can send Linda our love from this side of the country. Would you please do that for me? Thank you. The Spirit of America Award presented to Linda Marone for demonstrating exemplary personal sacrifice and initiative during 9/11 by immediately going to the Port Authority Police Headquarters to comfort and console family members and friends while knowing that her husband and many of his police officers had likely perished in the collapse of the World Trade Center towers. After learning that she had lost her husband, Fred, Linda continued working selflessly for months, doing her best to set aside her own grief and pain while committing herself to helping hold the Port Authority police families together through the ongoing nightmare. Linda Marone's sacrifice and strength of character and service to families and friends of the fallen demonstrate the highest ideals of the first responder community and the United States of America. Given in Cashmere, Washington, by the 9/11 Spirit of America Memorial Foundation Board of Directors during their annual ceremony on September 11th, 2018.
Will the audience please stand for the 21-gun salute, followed by taps, as we honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of this great nation. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our ceremony today. Please take time to continue to reflect, remember, and honor around the memorial here today, and join us for a reception, for refreshments, for reception to the Riverside room behind me. Thank you very much for coming.